Grain producers wear many hats. There is often a lot of discussion on producing the crop, but what about selling what they produce? How does that work? They need a plan. Farming operations are like any other business. They have to know what it costs to run their operation. If they know what it costs them, they can figure out what price they need to sell their grain for. This plan is called figuring a break-even. A break-even is a budget that tells a producer what they need to sell their crop for to pay all of their expenses. This is the price point where their expenses are covered, but there is no extra revenue or profit.
Keep on top of what the markets are doing. I'll look at an app on my phone. I'll keep my radio tuned. I can hear expert advice on the radio. And also we check DTN as well for live grain market movements.
So how do farming operations calculate break-even? First, a producer needs to add up all their expenses and then divide that by the total estimated yield. Yield is the amount of product harvested per acre. So how does a producer estimate what that will be?
So when a farmer sits down to figure out their break-even, an important thing is to figure out what's the yield that they're going to have and expect to raise. And about the best way to look at that is to look back at your own history. How have you raised a corn crop, or what's the bushels per acre that you've received, or looking at soybeans? Just look back on your own history to understand and to predict what that average yield might be. So we know when calculating our yield that there are many things outside of our control. Weather, for example, is a big one. And so when we try to figure out what is that break-even yield that we need to have, we don't want to factor in, well, let's have a bumper crop. We want to have that maximum amount of bushel per acre that we can possibly get out of that planting and that harvest, right? Because there are many things that can affect it. We could have hail, we could not get enough rain, we could have too much heat at the wrong time. So there's a lot of stuff that can lower our yield. That's why it's important to just look back over your time and what is that average, a longer run average, because that will capture some of those weather events.
Production has a large impact on break-even. When the crop is harvested and yields turn out better than expected, the producer has an opportunity to make more money as he now has more grain to sell. If yields turn out worse than expected, they will have less grain to sell. Producers must continue to refigure their break-even throughout the year as expenses, yield, and market prices can quickly change. As this is often a lot of work, producers sometimes seek the advice of a market expert to help them.
As a grain specialist builds a relationship with a producer, they come to understand what types of tools that producer is comfortable with. The producers are busy actually engaging in production agriculture throughout the growing season. Our grain specialists, through their knowledge of that producer, can make them aware of different opportunities and make a recommendation on, I believe that this tool would be good in this certain scenario, based on what I know about your operation, based on what I know about your break-even, and based on what I know about your financial goals. You want to use a hammer when it's time to use a hammer. You want to use a screwdriver when it's time to use a screwdriver. So there's a right tool in certain situations, and we need to make sure that we match those up properly for the farmer.
As you can see, a farming operation works just like any other business. Producers must know their break-even number in order to be profitable and stay in business. They truly wear many hats, but they are all hats that are worth it. Thanks for learning with Growing Agriculture Together. Find more resources at growingagriculturetogether.com.